Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Mel's Health 360 Wellness Challenge. I'm so glad you could join us. Today is day one, and our first module is going to be about mindset, because mindset is the foundation of accomplishing anything with success. So let us get started. Okay, so what am I going to cover today? This is a little outline, and there's just a few points that I want you to take home today. And so I'm going to start with fixed versus growth mindset, and then how to learn to unlearn. And then we'll go a little bit into what your daily practice needs to be for success. The main thing is to remember that success is based on daily habits. And so once they become daily habits, they're actually not hard anymore. It's getting to that point. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. And then your compelling why. And it's actually our compelling why that gets us through the difficult times. So that is a very important part. And then we're going to end on creating a personal map to health. And from there, you'll have an assignment, and you'll be well on your way to the next module. So I like to start with a definition. And so let's think about what is mindset exactly. And it's an established set of attitudes. And so our attitudes actually start when we're a young child. And by the time we're age 8, it is pretty much set into stone. It's not that we don't continue to grow, but our way of thinking, our worldview, our context for everything we think and do is already set by the age of 8. And so what happens is that sometimes those mindset things are very forwarding, and sometimes they are limiting. And so what I'd like to talk about next is a growth mindset, so that we can make sure that we're addressing any mindset issues that could be limiting you, and that we can work on breaking through those so that you can get to your success. So about fixed and growth mindset, this concept was originated by a Dr. Carol Dweck. It's a child psychologist, actually. And she pointed out that some children, when observing their behaviors and the way they learn, was very different. Some kids would approach challenges, obstacles, effort, criticism, and success of other people around them very differently. And it was those that had a growth mindset that tended to learn easier. And so even though this is based on children, it actually I found it affect me very well in the way I learn. And so I share it a lot. And so what is the difference between these two? Well, those with a fixed mindset tend to avoid challenges, whereas those with a growth mindset tend to embrace challenges. Those with a fixed mindset tend to give up easily when they're faced with an obstacle. I mean, I can think of how many times I look at something and go, oh, it's just not worth it. But children that have a growth mindset, they're actually, not only do they persist in the face of setbacks, they actually find it as a challenge and embrace it. Okay, so then as far as effort, those with a fixed mindset, they will use effort. They see effort as a fruitless enterprise, whereas those with a growth mindset see the value in effort, and they will embrace effort, just like challenge, understanding that's a path on the way to mastery. For criticism, those with a fixed mindset ignore useful negative feedback at best, and sometimes they actually will react badly to negative feedback. You can think of your children probably going, in the corner and getting really angry when you're trying to give them feedback out of the spirit of trying to help them. Those with a growth mindset, on the other hand, they actually embrace, well, I can't say they embrace criticism, but they understand that they learn from that criticism. and they don't react as negatively as a child with a fixed mindset. And then as far as the success of others, this is sort of interesting and something that we definitely see as adults, particularly in the working environment. Kids with a fixed mindset, they can be threatened by the success of others, whereas those with a growth mindset actually look up to people that are successful. They try to model people that are successful. They understand that just because other people's lights are burning brightly, it doesn't diminish their own. Okay, so then, as I said, Dr. Dweck learned or saw that children that had a growth mindset tended to learn faster, and the things that they learned were integrated better than those with a fixed mindset that tended to be more resistant to learning new things. So then how can you use this in your success? And particularly, we're talking about success in health, but you can use this for success in anything, really. Well, I love this saying that's in Japanese. It's a Japanese proverb that says, "Fall down 7 times, stand up 8." And I like it because it actually makes me think of little children and how resilient they are. When you think back to or watching a child grow and meeting their milestones, for instance, when they're trying to walk, they fall down many, many times, and they don't usually even stop. They just get right back up and keep going. And that's what we need to keep doing even as adults. It takes time, effort, persistence to learn anything, whether it's learning how to walk as a child or taking on a new skill as an adult. We need to have the same persistence and keep the same focus, I think is what I'm saying, because it's not like the baby really has a positive attitude. They don't really even understand what attitude is yet. But they have a persistence. It's sort of a focus. It's like, I'm going to walk. I want to get over there. And if I can't walk, I'm going to crawl, but I'm going to get over there. And so it's sort of the same thing. We want to have a very clear goal and the same focus and persistence that we're going to keep going until we get there. So I think about this a lot, about like if I particularly am frustrated myself, and it does happen, I just think back to that child and how that they stand up, they keep going no matter what. So just to wrap up this little section about fixed and growth mindset, the key is to think like a child, to remember that our goals are something we want to attain, and rather than thinking about what we're frustrated about, think about what we have accomplished on our way, and to just keep getting up and keep going. Sometimes a way to think about it is even like a game, to think, oh yeah, I'm on this journey and oops, I fell down, but that's okay. This time I'm getting up, and it's one less time that I need to fall down to get there. So yeah, these little sayings around this kid is a way to think about it. I have a growth mindset. I can learn anything I want to. Effort and attitude will help me improve. Constructive criticism is helpful. Determination will help me overcome my struggles. Mistakes are actually valuable, and challenge helps me grow. So whenever you get frustrated in this journey to your health, and I promise you it actually will happen, probably more than once, just try to remind yourself, let me shift into this growth mindset. Okay, so then about learning to unlearn. So as I mentioned before, by the time we're 8, we pretty much have our attitudes all set. And so we actually need to learn to unlearn. We need to learn to let go often. And then it turns out that our psyche and our body will actually knows what the right path is for us. And so if we will learn to unlearn and then learn to let go while keeping an eye on our goals and our why, we will actually naturally get there. It's amazing how it works. And so Some of the things in mastering the process of unlearning is to have daily, weekly, and monthly check-ins. Um, and that could mean self check-ins, or if you have a coach, I actually really recommend having a coach. It can be those kind of check-ins, or both, and you can have a community of health. And I would say if you're going to choose anything, it's really hard to be successful by yourself. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong, or that that's a failure. It actually is difficult to be successful on your own. We all need instruction and mentors and peers that are part of a community where we lift each other up, and then hopefully a mentor or a coach, as I said. So a teacher, a community, and a coach, or all. Like if you were going to do everything to make sure you're successful, that's what you would do. Some people, though, they want to start on their own, and that is fine. And so if that's what you want to do, I do want to make sure that you realize that you're going to go through a process of unlearning, and then you'll start relearning, and then you'll have a breakthrough. And as we do that over and over again, you'll actually find it progressively easy. But at the beginning, it can be difficult because it is a process of unlearning, relearning, having a breakthrough, and then proceeding again until you get to the next unconscious, subconscious block, unlearning it, relearning, having another breakthrough. And so it is a process. This is a journey to health. And I'm hoping these little concepts will set the background for your success. So as far as the meat of things, which is the practice of success, realize, of course, you know this already, that when we have goals in many things. We may have goals in our health, which is our topic today, but we often have goals in other things, like our career maybe, or if you're younger and still in school, or you've gone back to school, maybe you have educational goals. Often we have goals in our finances and goals in the relationships we have. And by relationships, I don't mean just your significant other, but also the relationships you have with family, with people at work, with your clients, if you have a business that's service related. All of these can be relationships that we have goals about surrounding. And so what happens often, as I started to go through, is this figure, is that if you look at the individual here, this is us, that we have goals in all of these areas. And then what happens is that we start out usually at the beginning of the year saying, okay, I have all these goals, and this year is going to be great. It's going to be different, and hopefully it is. But one thing is that some years are more difficult than others. For instance, in the year 2020, none of us realized we're going to have a year of a pandemic, right? And everyone had to shift everything, whether that was the goals in health or finances or in our careers or relationships, personal development, any of those. All of a sudden we had to pivot. And what happens often is when we make goals, I wouldn't say often, I'd say almost nearly 100% of the time, I mean, nothing ever works out the way we plan, right? And so what happens is that we're shifting in one or more, or for instance, in the year 2020, all of our original goals. And what I like to say is that life suddenly becomes lifey. And in that process, it becomes difficult. Things that seem really easy to accomplish in the whole picture can become difficult. And so one of the things I like to point out is that it's in the daily habits that we can overcome these things. And so here are a few concepts that are important in the practice of success. And I should say that this figure comes from a book that is called The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. So if you want to look it up or read his book, I find it very good. But this, I'm going to give you the crux of it. And that is that people who have a habit of breaking down their goals into small tasks that they need to do that are easy to do, and then that they make a habit of doing them even when they don't feel like doing them, they tend to become successful. And this is actually very kind of difficult to do in the face of a combination of different things, as I was saying. And so only 5% on average end up progressing to that or attaining that goal, because what happens is that sometimes the very same things that are easy to do are also easy not to do. And so it's all of us, me included. We go, oh, well, today I have X, Y, and Z to do, so I won't do it today. I'll start tomorrow. Or I'm going to do it on the weekend or something like that. And then it doesn't get done. It doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It's something that it's a go-to. But what happens if that happens a lot over time, then we don't reach our goal. And 95% of individuals don't meet at least one of those goals. So what happens is that at the end of the year, or at the time that you wanted to attain the goal, we tend to blame the reason why we didn't get there for that, whatever it was that got in the way, that was lifey. As I mentioned, it could be that there was the pandemic and all of a sudden we had to be in quarantine. It could be, and that's true, I'm not saying it's wrong. It could be that those deadlines at work that you didn't count on when you first made your goals. It could be many, many things. And what can happen is that we blame that issue rather than taking personal responsibility and saying, well, I made that choice. And really the whole thing is to take personal responsibility, as I said, and say, okay, if I am going to meet the success, it is up to me. And so I need to do this anyway, or I need to change it, maybe shift it to something where it's still a good practice. Maybe it wasn't the full thing you planned to do, but it's a partial thing, or that you really do postpone it, but you put it on a certain day and that you don't postpone it again. Okay, so this is sort of the practice of success, is to be mindful when those things happen, that you're not reactive to them, that you choose to say, okay, my philosophy is going to take an attitude, a growth mindset attitude, and I am going to renegotiate this within myself and make my task the smaller task, or I'm going to keep this task and do it later that isn't too far in the future. And that's how you're going to get to your successful results. So I think I have this summarized here, that the key concepts is that we will always, in our entire lives, even on the easy years, have a paradox of choices, and that those choices can be goal-driven or be in the moment. Like, okay, I have this thing in front of me, okay, and maybe it is a temptation, or maybe it is a conflict of interest, like something in work or a relationship came, and then you decide one or the other is more important in the moment. Okay, and then we can adjust, as I was explaining. So paradox of choices is one concept. The other is this little errors in judgment are what creates our success or not. That if we understand that all the little things that create success is all that really matters, rather than it doesn't really matter, then that we need to keep our word to ourselves, even when it seems small. That is what also helps propel us to success. One thing that really helps with this is if you have a supportive community, as I was saying, then you can lean on others, to help remind you, for instance, that those little things are important, or sometimes their own practices of sharing, like, boy, I didn't know what to choose today, and I chose this for me. And then hearing from the other people in the community, yay, good for you for being mindful. That's how, within a community, within a community, we can really lift each other up. And then obviously with a coach can often point out things that you don't even realize you're doing. So that takes it to a whole other level. A coach or an accountability buddy, the same sort of thing. You can help each other in pointing out things that maybe you weren't mindful of, and bring that to each other's awareness so that you can make a different choice. Okay, another thing is personal responsibility, and that is to remember to not focus on fault, blame, guilt, or shame, but rather to realize that you're doing the best that you can and that you're making mindful choices, and to take discipline or create discipline, but give yourself some grace at the same time. And then one of the other examples that I said is to, when you need to make adjustments with grace, but to be mindful of the consequences, so to make very thoughtful adjustments as you proceed with each day. Okay, so I like to share a story about little Miss Lily Pad, and her friend, Mr. Frog. And so one day, Mr. Frog visited Miss Lily Pad and jumped on the lily right next to Lily Pad. And Miss Lily said, well, you know, look at that beautiful view across the lake. I want to go over there. And Mr. Frog said, how could you ever get over there? That is so far away, and you're just one little lily pad. And Miss Lily said, well, I don't care. I'm going to get over there because it's just lovely, and that is my goal. And so Miss Lily decided, okay, what I can, that is kind of a difficult goal, but what I can do is to double myself every day. And so that's what she did. She committed to double herself every day. And so days passed, weeks passed, months passed, seasons passed, and eventually Miss Lily was halfway across to the other side of the lake. And then voila, the next day, she was all the way across the lake because all she had to do was double herself one more time. And so this is a great story about understanding that when you have a clear goal and a compelling why, and you break it down into something easy that's repetitive that you can do and that you can commit to, it's easy to do, easy not to do, but you commit to do it every day or every week, whatever you decide, but you're consistent, that you can reach your goal. So one more point I'd like to make, because some people are well on their way to a goal, but maybe you're at a place where you've reached a sticky point, or that you're doing great, but you want to optimize your path. And so there's a concept that's called structural tension. And so there's a picture here that shows when you're pulling back a rubber band. Okay, so if you think back to school and you used a rubber band to hit your friend with, then there were two things you needed. You needed a target and you needed tension in order for the rubber band to get where it needed to go. And so when we start getting on our path closer to our goal, there's less tension on that rubber band. And so if you were to let go with less tension, you likely won't hit your goal because the rubber band just falls down, right? And so another important thing to having easy tasks is that you also have to keep the tension on your rubber band. And so again, I have here the necessary ingredients are to have a clear vision of your desired outcome and to understand where you currently are. And so really, it's not that you're going backward with where you currently are, you're pushing forward your goal. And so, and you have to have it exactly right, because if you dream too big, then the rubber band breaks. And what happens is subconsciously you think, oh, that goal is too big. And so you might think, oh yeah, I can do it. And you're like, yeah, you know, on a conscious level, but your subconscious is going to fight you and say, oh no, you really can't do that. And so maybe you need to dial it back just a little bit. So it is all about having the right amount of tension, not too little and not too much, in order to get to your desired outcome. Okay, I keep talking about this compelling why. And this is really important because so many times we go into a goal because of a pain. And so if we start with a pain, one instance could be like losing weight. That's a very common one in health. Then what happens is that we can work really hard until we get at some point along that path. Say that your goal is to lose 50 pounds. And then you get to 25 pounds and it's like, oh yeah, I've done enough. And you kind of get a little bit not so, it's not as compelling anymore. I don't know, maybe we get bored. I'm not really sure. But if you can come up with a really compelling why that pulls you, then you'll keep going. It's kind of that same idea about needing to continually adjust your rubber band. And as you get closer, you have to adjust it again. So what I like to recommend is that you take your goal and put it in to something that really, really drives you. So one thing that's very common is children, because most people that have children, that is their why in life. And so if you take your goal of I need to lose 50 pounds and you say, okay, I want to lose 50 pounds because, and make that because whatever it is that really is the reason, your reason for living. And so maybe that is so that I can live to see my children get married and have grandchildren, so that I have enough energy in order to play with my grandchildren. Maybe it's because there's a goal that you have that you need time to attain. Maybe it's to write a book or compose a song, or it could be anything that really drives you. For someone who runs a business or has a nonprofit, maybe it has to do with that. But if you can take your goal and put it in that context, then you will still keep going. So, some people, they wait and neglect their health until they have diseases. And so it could be taking that I want my blood pressure to normalize, or my blood sugar to normalize, to something even beyond that. I don't want to have, or I would say not even don't have, because you should change your nots into yeses. And so it's like, I want to be heart healthy rather than saying I don't want to have another heart attack. So like, I want to be heart healthy so that I can participate with my church activities, or I want to not have, there I go with the not again, but I want my diabetes to no longer be, so that I have the energy to go on that hike with my friends. Or that's more transactional, but I'm trying to think on the spot, but something that is a little bit more transformational, that it's not just that hike. That can be the first goal, but it could be so that I can hike all the time because I love the beauty of nature, and I want to enjoy that, not just this year, but every year. And as I get older and my body gets older, I want it to function as if it is younger than my chronologic age. Okay, so some of the points I had on here is to avoid fear-based motivations. That also is to avoid no's or nots, or things that you don't want to have, and to change them to what you do want to have. And it is also more effective if you tie it to a self-defining purpose.